Welcome back to Whispers After Midnight, the place where the internet's darkest stories come to life. Tonight's video features a collection of creepy Reddit stories, subscriber submissions, chilling folklore, and classic creepypasta. The kinds of stories best listened to with the lights low and the doors locked. Quick disclaimer: these stories come from online sources and submissions. There's no proof they're real, but that doesn't make them any less disturbing. Before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy scary stories like these. It really helps the channel grow. And if you have a creepy experience or story idea, leave it in the comments. Your story might appear in a future episode. Now, turn the lights down, grab a snack, get comfortable, and let the whispers begin. I got the wrong package on the dark web, part 1. My name is James Clark, and until recently, my life was about as ordinary as it gets. I live in a quiet town just outside Kingston, Ontario. The kind of place where people still leave their porch lights on all night, and most neighbors know each other's dogs by name. Nothing big ever really happens here. Winters are long, summers are short, and the biggest excitement most weeks is someone hitting a deer on Highway 401. I worked nights at a packaging plant just outside town. My job was maintenance, fixing machines when they jammed, broke down, or started making the wrong noises. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well enough to keep the lights on and gas in my truck. Night shifts, though, they do something to you. When you're awake at 3 in the morning, surrounded by giant humming machines and flickering fluorescent lights, your brain starts wandering to strange places. That's how I first heard about the dark web. One night during a slow shift, I was sitting in the break room scrolling through forums on my phone. Someone had posted about something called Tor, a browser that lets you access hidden websites not indexed by normal search engines. Most people in the thread were arguing. Some said it was nothing but scams and conspiracy nonsense. Others insisted it was a massive underground marketplace where you could buy almost anything imaginable. Drugs, fake passports, stolen data, even stranger things. Honestly, I didn't believe half of it. But curiosity has a way of digging into your brain when you're bored and tired. So when I got home that morning, instead of going straight to bed, I downloaded the Tor browser. At first it felt disappointing. Most of the links didn't work. The ones that did looked ancient, plain text pages with gray backgrounds and barely any images. It didn't look like some secret futuristic underground network. It looked like the internet from the late 90s. I almost deleted it right away. But then I started exploring deeper. There were directories that listed hidden sites, forums, marketplaces, encrypted chat rooms. Some of it was exactly what people online had warned about. Drug markets, fake IDs, stolen credit cards. Honestly, it mostly looked like shady online shopping. But the deeper you go, the stranger things get. Some vendors sold things that made absolutely no sense. Encrypted USB drives labeled private archives. Untraceable phones, mystery shipments. The mystery shipments caught my attention. The idea was simple. You buy a sealed package without knowing what's inside. Vendors claimed the items came from abandoned storage lockers, lost freight shipments, or seized warehouse inventory. Basically random stuff that nobody had claimed. Some reviews claimed people received expensive electronics. Others said they got rare collectibles. A few probably received junk. It reminded me of those YouTube videos where people buy unclaimed airport luggage just to see what's inside. Except this was the dark web, which made it feel riskier, more exciting. For weeks, I only looked. I told myself I'd never actually buy anything. But curiosity has a way of slowly pushing your limits. One Friday night after work, I came home exhausted. It had been a brutal shift. One of the conveyor systems had completely seized up, and we spent hours dismantling the motor assembly while freezing air blew through the loading docks. When I finally got home, I cracked open a couple beers and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. Without really thinking about it, I opened the Tor browser. I started browsing the marketplaces again, scrolling through listings. Most of them were ridiculous. Encrypted mystery drive, $500. Unclaimed storage locker contents, $300. Then one listing caught my attention. The vendor's name was North Star Storage. Their page looked much more professional than most of the others. Clean layout, clear descriptions, hundreds of completed transactions. More importantly, their reviews were almost entirely positive. One listing stood out. Mystery package. Clearance lot, $120. The description read, recovered from abandoned storage locker purchase. Box sealed and untouched. Contents unknown. Could include electronics, documents, collectibles, or personal property. Ships discreetly within Canada. That last line caught my eye. Within Canada meant no customs inspections, no border checks, just normal domestic shipping. I scrolled through the reviews. Totally worth it. Got something way more valuable than expected. Best mystery purchase I've made. Maybe they were fake reviews. Maybe the seller had written them. But sitting there at my kitchen table with a couple beers in my system, it felt like a harmless gamble. Worst case scenario, I lose $120. Best case, something cool shows up at my door. So I did something incredibly stupid. I bought it. Buying something on the dark web isn't as simple as clicking buy. First, I had to purchase Bitcoin through an exchange. Then transfer it into a private wallet. Then move it again into the marketplace escrow system. The entire process took nearly an hour. When the payment finally cleared, I received a message from the seller. North Star Storage. Payment received. Package will ship tomorrow. That was it. Short, professional, nothing suspicious. For the next 2 days, I completely forgot about it. Work got busy, machines broke. My manager kept piling extra work orders on me. By the time my shift ended each morning, I was too tired to think about anything except sleep. Then one afternoon, I woke up and checked my email. There was a message from the marketplace. Package shipped. Tracking number attached. I copied the tracking number and checked the shipping website. The package was already moving through Ontario. First, a sorting facility in Ottawa. Then, a processing center near Kingston. Expected delivery, 3 days. For some reason, excitement started creeping in. I found myself checking the tracking multiple times a day, watching the progress like a kid waiting for Christmas. Finally, 3 days later, the tracking page updated. Out for delivery. The mail truck showed up just after noon. I heard the rumble of the engine outside my house and glanced out the window. The driver stepped out holding a medium-sized brown box. Nothing unusual about it. Just a plain shipping package. I opened the front door as he walked up the steps. "James Clark?" he asked. "Yeah." He handed over the box. "Have a good one." "Thanks." I carried the package inside and placed it on the kitchen table. It was heavier than I expected. Not crazy heavy, but definitely not empty. For a moment, I just stared at it. My brain kept imagining possibilities. Maybe an old camera, maybe some weird collectible, maybe just a pile of junk someone left in a storage locker. I grabbed a kitchen knife and sliced through the tape. Inside the cardboard box was another box, smaller, wrapped tightly in thick black plastic. That immediately felt strange. Why wrap something like that? I cut through the plastic, then opened the inner box. Inside were three things: a cheap flip phone, a sealed manila envelope, and a small metal lockbox. I stared at them for several seconds. That definitely wasn't random storage locker junk. The flip phone looked brand new. Plain black plastic. No visible brand, no markings. Just a basic prepaid phone. I picked it up. The screen suddenly lit up. It already had battery power. There was only one contact saved. "Call when package arrives." A cold feeling crept into my stomach. I slowly set the phone back down. Something about that message felt wrong. I looked at the envelope next. Across the front, written in thick black marker, were 4 words. "For Daniel only." My stomach dropped. This wasn't a mystery box. This was a delivery. And somehow, it had been sent to the wrong person. Me. I turned toward the lockbox. It was small but heavy. Cold steel. On the front was a tiny fingerprint scanner. No keyhole. No combination dial. Just the scanner. Whoever packed this box expected a specific person to open it. And that person wasn't James Clark. My heart started beating faster. Because if this package had been meant for someone else, that meant someone out there was expecting it. I picked up the flip phone again. The screen still showed that one contact. "Call when package arrives." My gut told me not to touch it, but curiosity kept whispering in my ear. What if this was some kind of mistake? What if calling solved everything? Before I could decide what to do, the phone suddenly rang. The sound made me jump. The screen displayed only 2 words. Unknown caller. My kitchen suddenly felt very quiet. The phone kept ringing, and for some reason, I knew whoever was calling already knew I had the package. The ringing stopped. Then, the phone buzzed. A text message appeared. I slowly picked it up. The message read, "James, you opened it." My blood ran cold. A second message appeared immediately. "That package wasn't meant for you." My hand started shaking. Then the final message appeared, the one that made my stomach twist. "Do not open the lockbox." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, because there was only one question running through my mind now. How did they know my name before I could even think of an answer? Another message appeared. "Someone is already on their way to get it." I slowly turned my head toward the front window. And that's when I noticed something that hadn't been there earlier. A black SUV sitting halfway down the street, engine running, headlights off. I stared at the text message on the flip phone. Someone is already on their way to get it. Slowly, I looked up from the screen and back toward the front window. The black SUV was still sitting halfway down the street, engine running, headlights off. My stomach twisted. It might have been nothing, just someone parked outside a neighbor's house. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. My phone buzzed again. Another message. James? Do you see them? A cold chill ran down my spine. I hadn't told anyone about the SUV. I slowly typed back, yes. The response came immediately. Then listen carefully. Another message followed. Do not open the door. Do not open the lockbox. And do exactly what I tell you. My mind raced. Who are you? I typed. 3 little typing dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, the message came through. Someone trying to keep you alive. That didn't make me feel better. Another message appeared. Leave the package outside. Now. I looked at the lockbox sitting on my kitchen table. Cold metal, silent. Whatever was inside it had already brought people to my house. I grabbed the cardboard box and shoved everything back inside. The lockbox, the phone, the envelope. My hands were shaking. I carried it to the front door. For a moment I hesitated. My porch suddenly felt like a stage, like someone was watching from across the street. Slowly, I opened the door. Cold air rushed inside. The street looked empty, but the black SUV was still there. I placed the box on the porch. Then I shut the door and locked it. My phone buzzed again. Good. Now move away from the windows. I stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. A minute passed, then 2. Then a car door slammed outside. Footsteps crunched through the snow. 2 sets. They stopped on my porch. My entire body went rigid. The doorknob rattled. Someone tested the lock. Then again, I held my breath. After a few seconds, one of them spoke. I couldn't hear the words clearly, just low voices. Then the cardboard box scraped across the porch as someone picked it up. More muffled conversation. Then the footsteps moved away. Car doors opened. The SUV engine revved. And finally, silence. My phone buzzed again. They're leaving. I slowly walked back toward the window and peeked through the curtain. The black SUV rolled down the street, turned the corner, and disappeared. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. For the first time since the package arrived, my house felt quiet again. My phone buzzed. You did the right thing, I typed back. What was in the lockbox? The response took longer this time. Finally, the message appeared. A hard drive. Another message followed. Stolen files. My stomach tightened. What kind of files? The phone buzzed again. Evidence. Another message appeared. Videos. My chest tightened. Of what? The reply came instantly. Powerful people doing terrible things. A chill crept down my spine. The next message came through. Daniel was supposed to deliver those files to journalists. My mind flashed back to the envelope on the table. The one marked, "For Daniel only." What happened to him? I typed. There was a long pause. Then the answer came. Car crash. Another message. Highway 401. My stomach dropped. I remembered hearing about that accident on the radio. Single car crash during a snowstorm. Driver dead. At the time, it sounded like a normal winter accident. Now it didn't feel normal at all. My phone buzzed again. The people who came to your house think they recovered the only copy. My fingers hovered over the keypad. Only copy? The typing dots appeared. Then the reply came. Daniel made a second one. A cold wave ran down my spine. I slowly turned toward the kitchen table. The manila envelope was still there, the one labeled "For Daniel Only." My heart started pounding. I walked over and picked it up. The envelope suddenly felt heavier than before. I tore it open. Inside was a small black USB drive. My stomach dropped. There was also a folded piece of paper. I opened it slowly. 4 words were written in thick black marker. If you're reading this. My throat tightened as I read the next line. Then Daniel is probably dead. A chill ran down my spine. The final line read, "Do not trust anyone who contacts you." My phone buzzed again. A new message appeared. James, then another. Destroy the drive. My heart started racing. Something suddenly felt wrong. Why? I typed. The reply came seconds later. Because if those files become public, another message appeared. People will die. My chest tightened. Then the final message appeared. Including me. I froze. Slowly, I typed back, "Who are you?" The response came immediately. "Someone who helped Daniel steal those files." Another message followed. "But I can't let them be released." My stomach twisted. Everything suddenly made sense. The warnings, the instructions. They weren't trying to protect me. They were trying to protect themselves. My phone buzzed again. James? Then another message appeared. You already did your part. Now destroy the drive. I stared at the tiny USB sitting in my hand. Proof of something terrible. Proof powerful people would kill to hide. My phone buzzed again. The final message appeared. I'm closer to you than they were. At that exact moment, there was a knock on my front door. 3 slow knocks. My phone buzzed one last time. Open the door. I stood there frozen, the house completely silent. Another knock echoed through the hallway. My heart pounded. Slowly, I walked toward the door. My hand hovered over the lock because at that moment I realized something. The people in the SUV, they never knocked, which meant whoever was outside now was someone else, and somehow they already knew my name. I accidentally got the wrong package from the dark web, part 1. My name is Jared Holmes, and 3 weeks ago I walked out of prison after serving 24 years for a crime I didn't commit. I was 22 when it happened. Now I'm 46. When the guards opened the gates at Millhaven Institution that morning, the cold Ontario air hit my face. And for a second I just stood there staring at the sky like I'd never seen it before. 24 years. That's a long time to watch life through fences and concrete. A lot of people think getting out of prison means freedom. But the truth is, it's more like being dropped into a world that moved on without you. Phones were different. Cars were different. Money was different. Even people were different. And I had almost nothing. No savings, no job, no family waiting outside the gate. Just a thin envelope from the prison office with $312, a bus ticket, and paperwork saying I was officially free. Free, but still labeled a murderer. The crime back in 2002, I worked nights loading freight at a jewelry warehouse in Hamilton, Ontario. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid enough to cover rent and keep my old pickup running. One night, 2 men broke into the warehouse after closing. The alarm never went off. The safe was opened, and the overnight security guard ended up dead. Someone tipped the police. Someone told them I had inside knowledge of the building. Someone testified they saw me leaving the area that night. That someone was my friend, Mark Ellis. Mark and I had grown up together, same neighborhood, same high school. He was practically family, and he told the police I planned the robbery. He swore under oath that I bragged about knowing the security codes. The jury believed him. By the time investigators discovered Mark's fingerprints on the safe, the trial was already over. He disappeared before they could bring him in, and the court said it wasn't enough to reopen the case. So I went to prison, 24 years, for something I didn't do. Prison changes. Prison is simple in one way. Every day is the same. Wake up, count, work, eat, count again, lockdown. You either fall apart or you adapt. I adapted. I worked in the machine shop for nearly 15 years, learning how to repair industrial equipment. I lifted weights. I kept quiet. And I watched people. Prison teaches you how to read someone's intentions before they even speak. It also teaches patience. And patience was the only thing keeping me sane. Because someday, somehow, I was going to prove I didn't kill that guard. Freedom isn't easy. The halfway house in Kingston was a depressing brick building that smelled like cheap coffee and cleaning chemicals. 6 men shared the place. Most of them were counting days until they messed up again. I stayed quiet, kept to myself, worked temporary jobs. But there was one problem I couldn't ignore. My name, Jared Holmes, convicted murderer. Every job application brought it up, every background check, every landlord, every opportunity. No one wanted anything to do with me. After 2 weeks of trying to live honestly, I realized something important. The system might have released me, but it wasn't going to give me a second chance. So I started thinking differently. The dark web. One night, a guy at the halfway house named Trevor mentioned something interesting. He had been inside for fraud, credit cards, fake identities. He told me about the dark web, hidden marketplaces where people bought things that didn't officially exist. Fake passports, driver's licenses, entire identities. At first I ignored him, but the idea kept sticking in my head. A new identity meant a new start. No criminal record, no barriers, just freedom. A few days later, Trevor showed me how it worked. Tor browser, cryptocurrency wallets, encrypted messaging. Within an hour, I was staring at websites that looked like they hadn't been updated since 1998. But the listings were real. Canadian passport, $4,000 driver's license, $1,200 complete identity package, $6,000 new name, new documents, new digital history, fresh start. I didn't have that kind of money, but I had something else. 24 years of patience and a plan. Buying the identity, I spent the next week researching vendors. Most of them looked like scams, but one seller kept appearing in forum discussions. Northern Ghost Services. They specialized in Canadian documents. Their reviews were almost perfect. Eventually, I found a smaller listing. Starter identity package, $900, driver's license, birth certificate, basic digital records, enough to start over. I sold almost everything I owned to scrape the money together. Then Trevor helped me convert it into cryptocurrency. The transaction was simple. Send payment, receive instructions. The vendor messaged me within minutes. Northern Ghost. Package ships in 72 hours. That was it. No questions, no conversation. Just business. Delivery day. 3 days later, I received a tracking number. The package was coming from Toronto. I checked the tracking obsessively. Sorting facility, distribution center, out for delivery. It finally arrived late in the afternoon. A courier van pulled up outside the halfway house. The driver handed me a medium-sized box. Nothing unusual about it. Just a plain brown shipping package. My heart was pounding as I carried it inside. This was it. The moment my new life started. I sat on my bed and cut through the tape. Inside was another smaller box wrapped in thick black plastic. That immediately felt strange. But I pushed the thought aside. I cut the plastic and opened the box. Inside were 3 things: a sealed metal container, a burner phone, and a small envelope. That wasn't right. Where were the documents? I grabbed the envelope. It had 4 words written on it. Delivery confirmation required. That definitely wasn't what I paid for. I turned on the burner phone. It already had battery power. 1 contact was saved. Call when package arrives. Something felt wrong, very wrong. But curiosity won. I pressed call. The phone rang once. Then someone answered. A calm male voice. Confirm delivery. I hesitated. I think you sent me the wrong package. Silence. Then the man spoke again. What's your name? Jared? Another long pause. Then the voice changed. Completely. It wasn't calm anymore. It sounded alarmed. Don't open the container. My stomach tightened. What is it? The man ignored the question. Instead, he asked one of his own. Where are you right now? The line suddenly went dead. The phone screen went dark. Seconds later, it buzzed with a text message. That package was not meant for you. Another message appeared. Stay where you are. Then the final one. Someone is coming to retrieve it. I stared at the metal container on my bed. Cold steel, heavy, and suddenly the halfway house felt a lot less safe. Because if someone was coming to get it, they probably weren't coming politely. The visitors. It took less than 15 minutes. I heard the sound of tires outside, 2 vehicles pulling up, doors slamming, heavy footsteps in the hallway. Not residents, not staff. These guys moved like professionals. My instincts kicked in immediately. Prison had taught me something important. When trouble shows up, you don't wait for it. You prepare. I grabbed the metal container and slid it under the mattress. Then, I stepped quietly toward the door. The hallway outside was full of voices, low, aggressive. Then someone knocked on the front office door downstairs, hard. I heard raised voices, arguments, then footsteps moving toward the staircase, coming up, straight toward the bedrooms. My room. The door handle rattled, locked. A man's voice spoke through the door. Open it. I said nothing. The handle rattled again. Then the door slammed open as someone kicked it. 2 men stepped inside, both wearing dark jackets, both looking like they'd done this kind of thing before. One of them spoke. Where's the package? I looked at him calmly. What package? The second guy moved closer, too close. He reached for my shirt. That's when prison instincts took over. I grabbed his wrist, twisted, hard, bone cracked. He screamed. The other man lunged toward me. I drove my elbow straight into his throat. He collapsed instantly. The first guy was still clutching his broken wrist. I stepped forward. One punch. He hit the floor. Both men were down, groaning, alive, but not getting up. My heart was pounding, because if these guys came looking for the package, there were probably more behind them. And I suddenly understood something very important. Whatever was inside that metal container, people were willing to kill for it. The realization. I grabbed the container and the burner phone, stuffed them into a backpack. Then I ran, out the back exit, across the parking lot, into the street. I didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away, breathing hard in the freezing night air. My phone buzzed. A new message. Jared? Another message followed. You just made a very serious mistake. I stared at the screen, then looked down at the metal container in my hands. Whatever was inside it, it had just turned my second chance at freedom into something else entirely. A war. And for the first time in 24 years, I finally had something the people who ruined my life wanted. The cold air burned my lungs as I ran. 3 blocks away from the halfway house, I finally slowed down, ducking into the shadow of a closed convenience store. Snow crunched under my boots, and my breath came out in white clouds. 24 years in prison teaches you how to move fast when you have to. But it also teaches you something else. Never panic. I leaned against the brick wall and forced myself to breathe slowly. Think. 2 men had just kicked in my door looking for that metal container. They weren't cops. They weren't security. They were professionals. And judging by the way they moved, they weren't expecting a fight. That meant something important. They thought the person holding the package would be easy to intimidate. Someone who would hand it over. Not someone who had spent half their life surviving prison. My backpack felt heavier as I adjusted it on my shoulders. Inside was the metal container and the burner phone. The phone buzzed again. A new message. Jared? Another message followed seconds later. You should not have run. I stared at the screen, then typed back one simple message. You sent the wrong package. The reply came immediately. No. Another message appeared. You received the wrong package. That sent a chill down my spine, because there's a big difference between those 2 sentences. I looked around the empty street. Snow fell slowly under the streetlights. No cars, no people. For now, I was alone. The phone buzzed again. Bring the container back. Another message followed. You can still walk away. I laughed quietly to myself. 24 years in prison teaches you something else too. When criminals offer mercy, it usually means they're desperate. I typed back, "What's in it?" The typing dots appeared, then disappeared. Then came the answer. Nothing that concerns you. That confirmed it. Whatever was inside that container was valuable. Dangerously valuable. The phone buzzed again. You have 1 hour. After that, we come find you. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. They could try. But I wasn't planning to stay anywhere long enough to be found. On the run. I moved through side streets until I reached the bus terminal. Night buses ran between Kingston and Toronto every few hours. No ID required if you paid cash. Luckily, I still had some of the money I hadn't spent on the fake identity. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in the back of a half-empty bus heading west on Highway 401. The same highway where Mark Ellis's robbery had ruined my life. The same highway where Daniel, the guy who was supposed to receive this package, apparently died. The metal container sat in my backpack between my feet. For the entire ride, I kept thinking about one thing. What could be inside that container? Drugs didn't make sense. Neither did weapons. Those guys didn't act like smugglers. They acted like people trying to retrieve something extremely important. Something specific. The bus arrived in Toronto just after midnight. The city lights looked overwhelming after spending years inside prison walls. But Toronto also had something I needed. Anonymity. Opening the container. I rented a cheap room at a rundown motel near the train tracks. No ID required. Cash only. The kind of place where nobody asks questions. Inside the room, I locked the door and pulled the curtains closed. Then, I finally took the metal container out of my backpack. It was solid steel, about the size of a lunchbox. No keyhole, no combination dial, just a small electronic latch on the side. I searched the container carefully. Then I noticed something. A tiny indentation near the latch, a hidden button. I pressed it. The latch clicked open. My heart started pounding as I lifted the lid. Inside was a small encrypted hard drive and a folded piece of paper. That was it. No money, no drugs, no weapons. Just a hard drive. I opened the note. 3 words were written in black ink. For Daniel. Below it was a password and a website address, a dark web address. I stared at it. Whatever was on that hard drive, someone had gone through a lot of trouble to move it secretly. And judging by the men who came to retrieve it, they didn't want anyone seeing it. I plugged the drive into the old laptop in the motel room, entered the password. A folder opened, and what I saw inside made my stomach turn. Videos, documents, financial records, security footage, evidence. Evidence connecting dozens of people to crimes, politicians, corporate executives, police officers, all tied to an organized smuggling ring operating through shipping warehouses across Ontario. One of those warehouses looked familiar, very familiar. My chest tightened as I stared at the address. It was the same jewelry warehouse where the robbery happened 24 years ago. The same robbery I went to prison for. And suddenly everything made sense. I wasn't set up randomly. That robbery was part of something bigger, something organized. And Mark Ellis, he had been working for them. The plan. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the screen. 24 years stolen from me. 24 years because I had been the easiest person to blame. But now I had something they desperately wanted back. Proof. Real proof. I could take it to the police, but after what I saw on that hard drive, some of the police were part of it, which meant I needed to be careful. Very careful. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the burner phone. Last chance. Return the container. I smiled slightly, because now I had a different idea. If they wanted the package so badly, I'd let them think they were getting it. Back to the dark web. The next morning, I went back online, using the dark web marketplace again. The same vendor who sold fake identities was still active. Northern Ghost Services. I sent them a message. Need delivery information for last order. The response came quickly. Northern Ghost. Orders cannot be reversed, I replied. I need to know where the package came from. No response. So I sent something else. A screenshot from the hard drive, one showing the warehouse operation. That got their attention. 2 minutes later, a new message arrived. Northern Ghost. You shouldn't have that, I typed back. I'm coming to return it. Long pause. Then the message appeared. Northern Ghost. Meet the courier tonight. And just like that, I had what I needed. The warehouse. The meeting happened that night in an industrial district near the harbor. Shipping containers stacked everywhere. Truck traffic moving in and out. Perfect place for illegal operations. I spotted the courier van immediately. Same company logo as the one that delivered my package. The driver stepped out as I approached. He looked nervous. Do you have it? He asked. I nodded. But instead of handing over the backpack, I stepped closer. Then quietly said, Take me to the warehouse. His eyes widened. What? I know where the package came from, I said calmly, and I know what's on the drive. His face went pale. I can't. You can, I interrupted, because the police are already on their way. That part wasn't entirely true, yet, but the fear in his eyes told me something important. He believed me, and fear makes people cooperate. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in the back of the van as it drove toward the docks. The warehouse looked enormous. Dozens of trucks parked outside, workers moving crates. Everything looked normal. But I knew better, because I had already sent the files from that hard drive to someone else. A journalist, and an anonymous tip line at the RCMP. If even half those files were real, this place was about to become the center of a massive investigation. The bust. The courier led me inside through a side entrance. Rows of shipping crates filled the warehouse. Workers stopped and stared as we passed. Then suddenly, sirens. Dozens of them. Blue and red lights exploded through the windows. Police vehicles surrounded the building. Shouts echoed through the warehouse. RCMP! Nobody move! Chaos erupted instantly. Workers running, managers yelling, but there was nowhere to go. Within minutes, the entire operation was locked down. Dozens of arrests. Boxes opened. Evidence everywhere. And standing there in the middle of it all was me, Jared Holmes. The man who had spent 24 years in prison for a crime tied to this operation. One of the officers approached me. Are you the one who sent the files? I nodded. He studied me carefully, then said something I had waited decades to hear. We're reopening your case, clearing my name. 3 months later, the news spread across the country. The smuggling ring had been operating for nearly 30 years. Dozens of arrests, millions of dollars seized, and the robbery that sent me to prison had been orchestrated by members of that same organization. Mark Ellis was finally found too, living under a fake name in Vancouver. When the police questioned him, he confessed almost immediately. I wasn't part of the robbery. I had been framed, just like I said, 24 years ago. A new start. The day the court officially cleared my name, I walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight. This time the air felt different again, but not like the day I left prison. This time it felt like something else. Justice. And for the first time in nearly a quarter of a century, I finally had what I wanted. My life back. All because I accidentally received the wrong package from the dark web. My name is Lucas Petrov, and in the winter of 2002, when I was 14 years old, I accidentally found something on the internet that should not have existed. Back then, the internet was very different. No smartphones, no social media, no endless apps, just old desktop computers, slow dial-up connections, and websites that looked like they were built by someone in their basement. I lived in a small apartment in Bratislava, Slovakia, with my mother and younger sister. My mother worked long hours at a hospital, so most evenings it was just me at home after school. And the one thing that kept me entertained during those quiet nights was our old computer. It was a bulky beige desktop sitting on a wooden desk in the corner of the living room. The monitor hummed softly when it warmed up. The modem screamed every time it connected to the internet. But to me, it felt like a doorway to another world. Most nights, I would log on to IRC chat rooms. If you were on the internet in the early 2000s, you probably remember them. Huge public chat rooms filled with strangers from all over the world. Some rooms were about games, some about music, some were just random people talking. I liked exploring them. Sometimes you'd meet interesting people, sometimes you'd meet complete weirdos. But one night in November 2002, I stumbled into a chat room that changed everything. It started like any normal evening. My mom had just left for her night shift. My sister was asleep. I was sitting at the computer, browsing random IRC servers. One of the servers had hundreds of different rooms listed. Most had names like #music, #gaming, or #randomchat. But one room caught my attention. It was called #QuietKids. The name sounded strange, but there were only 3 users inside. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked join. Immediately, a message appeared in the chat window. "Welcome, Lucas." I froze. My username wasn't Lucas. Online, I used the nickname Shadow Kid. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Then I typed, "Shadow Kid." "Who said that?" A reply appeared instantly. "Watcher." "Hello again." My heart skipped. Again? I had never been in this chat room before. Another user typed, "North Star, you're early tonight." That made even less sense. I typed again, "Shadow Kid." "I think you have the wrong person." A few seconds passed. Then another message appeared. "Watcher." "No, we don't." My stomach tightened. I leaned closer to the screen. Then another message appeared. "Watcher. You're sitting in your living room." I stopped breathing for a second. The chat continued. "Watcher. The computer desk is next to the window." My chest tightened, because that was true. The desk was next to the window. I typed quickly, "Shadow Kid." "How do you know that?" No one answered. For almost 30 seconds, the chat remained silent. Then a third user finally spoke. "Gatekeeper. Because we've been waiting for you?" That sentence made my skin crawl. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe they were just messing with me somehow. So I typed something sarcastic. "Shadow Kid." "Yeah, sure. Shadow Kid." "Then what am I wearing?" The response appeared almost instantly. "Watcher, blue sweater." My stomach dropped. I looked down. I was wearing a blue sweater. At that moment, the apartment suddenly felt very quiet. Too quiet. I looked around the room. Nothing seemed out of place. The curtains were closed. The door was locked. No one else was home. I turned back to the screen. More messages appeared. Gatekeeper. Don't worry, gatekeeper. You're safe. That didn't make me feel better, not even a little. I typed again. Shadow Kid. How do you know that stuff? There was another pause. Then the message appeared. Watcher. Because you're important. That sentence confused me more than anything else. I was a 14-year-old kid sitting at a computer. There was nothing important about me. Before I could type anything else, another message appeared. North Star. Do you remember the playground? My fingers froze on the keyboard. What playground? Then another message appeared. North Star, the red slide. My stomach twisted, because I knew exactly what they were talking about. There was a small playground near my old school. It had a red metal slide, but I hadn't been there in years. I slowly typed. Shadow Kid. What about it? The response came immediately. North Star. You fell from the top. That made my chest tighten. When I was 9 years old, I fell off that slide and broke my wrist. Only a few people knew about that. My mom, a couple teachers, and some kids from school. But there was no way random strangers online could know that. My hands felt shaky now. I typed one word. Shadow Kid. Who are you? For almost a full minute, nobody answered. Then finally the user called Watcher replied. Watcher. We're the ones who find people. My heart was pounding. Find people? What did that even mean? Another message appeared. Gatekeeper. People like you. That made my skin crawl again. I started wondering if someone from my school was playing a prank on me somehow. But the things they knew, those weren't normal things. The chat continued. North Star. You're curious, Watcher. Curious people always end up here. I stared at the messages. Something about this felt wrong, very wrong. So I decided to leave. I typed one last message. Shadow Kid. This is weird. Shadow Kid. I'm leaving. I moved my mouse toward the exit button, then a new message appeared, and the words made my entire body go cold. Watcher. Lucas, Watcher. Don't look behind you. My heart started racing, slowly, very slowly. I turned my head toward the dark window behind the computer, and that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a silhouette outside the glass, standing perfectly still, watching me. For a second, I couldn't move. My eyes stayed locked on the dark window behind the computer. The streetlight outside cast just enough light across the glass to see a shape. A person, standing outside our apartment building window, watching me. My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it was shaking my whole chest. Our apartment was on the second floor. There was no balcony, no fire escape, nothing anyone could stand on, which meant one of two things. Either I was imagining things, or someone was somehow standing on the narrow ledge outside the window. My computer screen blinked again. Another message appeared in the chat room. Watcher. We told you not to look. My fingers felt numb on the keyboard. Slowly, I turned back toward the screen. My hands were shaking as I typed. Shadow Kid. Who is outside my window? The reply came instantly. Gatekeeper. Nobody. That answer made my stomach twist, because I had just seen someone there. I quickly turned my head again. The window was empty now. The silhouette was gone. My chest tightened. Maybe it was a shadow. Maybe I imagined it. But deep down I knew I hadn't. I turned back to the screen. 3 new messages had appeared. North Star. You shouldn't have joined this room, Watcher. But now that you're here, Gatekeeper, they know about you. My throat felt dry. Shadow Kid, who knows about me? The typing dots appeared. Then the answer came. Watcher. The people who watch the quiet kids. My stomach dropped. I didn't even know what that meant. Before I could respond, another message appeared. North Star, you should close your curtains. I immediately turned toward the window again. The curtains were open just a little. Just enough for someone outside to see inside. My heart started racing. I jumped up and pulled the curtains shut. When I turned back to the computer, the chat had continued without me. Gatekeeper. He saw the window. Watcher. That means they're already close. Cold fear crept down my spine. Shadow Kid. Who are they? For almost 30 seconds, no one answered. Then one final message appeared. Watcher. The collectors. I had no idea what that meant. But I knew one thing. I didn't want to stay in that chat room anymore. I moved my mouse and clicked disconnect. The chat window closed. The screen went silent. For a moment, I just sat there listening to the quiet apartment. The refrigerator humming in the kitchen. The faint sound of wind outside. My heart slowly started calming down. Maybe it really was just a prank. Some weird internet trolls messing with a kid. I shut down the computer. The monitor flickered off, and the living room went dark. I stood up and walked toward the hallway to check on my sister. She was still asleep in her room. Everything looked normal. But something still didn't feel right. I walked back into the living room. The curtains were still closed. The window looked normal. Then suddenly, tap, a small sound against the glass. I froze. Tap. Tap. Someone was tapping on the window. Slowly, deliberately. My heart started racing again. I walked slowly toward the curtains. Every instinct in my body told me not to open them. But curiosity won. My hand reached out and pulled the curtain aside. The window was empty. No one was there. Just the dark street below. I let out a breath. Then something caught my eye. There was a piece of paper pressed against the outside of the glass. My stomach tightened. I slowly unlocked the window and pushed it open just enough to grab it. The paper was folded once. I unfolded it carefully. There were only 2 lines written in messy handwriting. You were not supposed to find the room. Below that was another sentence, the one that made my blood run cold. Now they know where you live. My hand started shaking. I looked down toward the street. No one was there. No footsteps, no movement, just an empty sidewalk. I quickly shut the window and locked it. Then I ran to the phone in the kitchen and called my mom at the hospital. I told her everything. The chat room, the messages, the person outside the window, the note. She told me to stay calm and call the police. 2 officers came to the apartment about 20 minutes later. They checked the building, the street, the roof. But they didn't find anyone. No footprints, no sign anyone had been there. They took the note with them, asked me a lot of questions, and eventually they left. My mom came home early that night. She unplugged the computer and moved it into her bedroom. For weeks after that, she wouldn't let me use the internet alone. But that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part happened 2 days later, when the police came back. They told my mom something that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. They said they tracked the IRC server where that chat room existed. But according to the server logs, there had never been a room called #QuietKids. Not that night. Not ever. As far as the server was concerned, that chat room never existed. I never went looking for it again. But sometimes I still think about that message, the one that appeared right before I left, the one I almost forgot about. Because just before I disconnected, the user called Watchers sent one final line, a message I didn't notice until it was too late. It said, "We'll see you again when you're older." And that's where tonight's story ends. I hope you enjoyed the video and the story we shared tonight on Whispers After Midnight. Just remember, the internet has a lot of dark corners. And the dark web is one place you definitely shouldn't mess around with, unless you're ready to find things you can't unsee. If you liked this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if there's a specific type of story you want to hear, dark web encounters, creepy jobs, strange neighbors, haunted places, leave a comment below. Your idea might become the next story featured on the channel. Thanks for listening. And until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, the best stories are always told after midnight.